English translation, 446th contact, Saturday, 17th of March, 2007, 11:03 hours.
Hello, Ptah. You have been waiting.
Yes, Edward, my friend, I was already here when I called you. When I noticed that you were already awake, I thought I would come here right now instead of after 12 HRAs. The reason for my early arrival is that after proofreading, I have to get back to my urgent work. Then be greeted now.
Last Sunday, I watched a program on TV, which talked about electronic technology, which will be common on Earth in 2070. It was quite interesting, because it showed a lot of things that you also had in the past, before you extended everything concerning the operation and control of devices, apparatus, spacecraft, machines, holographic vision, communication and robots, etc. to pure mind control. Actually, we have never officially talked about it, or at least only rarely, the reason being that it would have sounded too futuristic and fantastic. But now that the Earthlings are broadcasting such information programs on television about future electronic technology, I suppose we can talk about it too, can we not? In our core group, the whole thing is not a secret, but outwardly we have not let it be known much that all your technological and electronic operations are no longer done manually, but purely with mental swinging waves, so that all possible operations and circuits, etc., on apparatuses, devices, weapons, and all kinds of machines, etc., are done purely with mental swinging waves. However, no holographic control panels are used in this process, which would still have to be operated by finger touch, as was shown, for example, in the program in question. In your case, the whole thing works through a central computer, which receives all thought-swinging waves and converts them into corresponding functions, as Quetzal once explained to me when I was at his home. Although you can operate everything by hand, because everything is equipped for it, you only use it if you want to, or if there is a breakdown. But breakdowns are completely impossible because your technology is perfectly sophisticated and can independently detect and repair potential damage before it occurs.
Our technology in this regard is actually very highly developed and seems really futuristic to Earth humans. So it is perhaps not good that you have talked about it now anyway. The reality of all our technology in every respect is much higher than what you have explained in your words, as you know. The whole thing in every respect is not yet imaginable for the Earth human, and therefore not comprehensible and not to be understood. But I think that we should not talk about it officially. Your words could be interpreted as fantasy.
Which fundamentally does not matter to me, which you should actually know, my friend. Besides, the earthly technological future will also bring the mentioned development, after which I will no longer be called a fantasist and a liar, at least with regard to these things. But it is probably right when I say that the future will bring developments to the humans of the Earth, which probably only fantasists can imagine today. When I think of the androids, which can think and act independently because they have an autogenic artificial brain, then I have reservations, because if the humans of the Earth are not able to control these artificial beings, then there is the danger that androids will one day take over the dominance of the humans. Autogenous artificial brains, I have learned in relation to your androids, have a spirit form, and therefore the artificial consciousness forms can switch and rule at their own discretion. So the Earth humans, if they develop such androids, would have to install a safety device in them, so that the danger of the androids taking over the rule over the humans is excluded. This would be the same as with your androids, for which it is impossible to strive for dominance over humans through such a safety device.
That is probably true, but still. The Earth humans of today do not yet understand the whole thing, what the technological and other developments of the near and far future will bring them. Fantasies and visions that are realized are not the strength of the great mass of the humans, but only of individuals.
But the gifted of imagination do not remain unnoticed. This was already the case with Jules Verne, who wrote several books with utopian content during his 77 years of life. Although his utopias did not remain such, but were realized in the 20th and also in the 21st century. He was a visionary like Leonardo da Vinci and many others whose visions and fantasies became reality. But past and forgotten, let us talk about something else. For example, about the booklet Dzog-Chen, the Original State, which I received from a certain Michael Voigtländer from Germany and gave to you on 31st July last year for clarification, is whether there is any truth in the fact that this Dzog-Chen, with 6,400,000 Dzog-Chen Tantras, is known or supposed to exist on 13 other planets besides Earth.
That is what I wanted to tell you about today. And see here, I am giving you back the booklet, the teachings of which are known to me, as I explained to you when you handed it to me. So it was just a matter of clarifying whether the whole thing was based on truth in relation to the claim that 6,400,000 Dzog-Chen Tantras exist on other 13 planets. This clarification took a great deal of time and was carried out both by myself and by a large number of my co-workers who volunteered for this extensive task. Our very extensive research on all planets known to us and inhabited by human life of various kinds in extensive areas of your galaxy, as well as in our space-time continuum, has not been successful. Accordingly, it must be said that the assertion regarding the 13 planets and the 6,400,000 Dzog-Chen Tantras is a swindle or a lie, which does not in the slightest way show a jot-like truth. If there was even a tiny iota of truth in the claim, we would have had to have found it, because our research was not only about the present, but also about different eras of the past.
The Dzog-Chen teaching was unknown to me, but I have studied it a little and found that it moves along Buddhist lines.
It is a teaching that was taught secretly in earlier times, parallel to the teaching of official Buddhism. However, it would be pointless to discuss it, because the whole thing is based on partly very wrong views and teachings, as they are unfortunately also given in Buddhism.
I have also realized that. So let us leave that behind and turn to the weather, or what the weather will bring us in the near future. No snow has fallen yet, so it is interesting to know if we can expect some snowfall after all.
This will indeed be the case starting next week, but the snowfall will be quite heavy, partly down to the lowlands. However, the snowy weather will only last for a short time, after which the real spring weather will arrive. As a special event, it should be mentioned that on March 25th, a seaquake of magnitude 6.9 will occur off the west coast of Japan, not far from the city of Noto, where a tsunami movement of hardly any significance will occur. However, the destruction in the countryside and in the cities will be all the greater because the quake will also spread over hundreds of kilometers across the country, which is why Tokyo on the east side of Japan will also be affected. According to this, there will be two severe seaquakes of magnitude 8.1 and 6.5 in the Solomon Islands in quick succession, many of which will be hit by a very severe destruction caused by an emerging multi-sectional tsunami reaching heights of 5 to 10 meters. Also, unfortunately, human lives will be lost in this event, although the number of lives lost can be put in the dozens. Just one day later, an earthquake measuring 6.2 on the Richter scale occurs in the Hindu Kush in Afghanistan, spreading great terror and panic, but not causing much destruction. Extraordinary things happen on the 4th anniversary of the fall of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, because finally parts of the Iraqi people, especially Shiite believers, awaken and demonstrate openly in large masses against the U.S. and British occupations in the country, demanding that they should finally leave Iraq for good. On the 13th of April, a major earthquake of magnitude 6.3 occurs in the Acapulco region of Mexico, shaking large parts of the country as far as the capital. This happens while the eastern part of the USA is hit by unusually severe winter storms. In the USA, there is also a bloody massacre at the Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, where an extremely severely mentally disturbed young student in irrepressible hatred and jealousy with firearms carries out his degenerate lust for revenge on more than 30 people, murdering mainly students and some university teachers. According to the report, the volcano Nevado del Huila, which became active again in February after 500 years of silence, erupts again in Colombia and triggers a huge avalanche of debris, causing great damage. Then follows a seaquake of magnitude 5.4 in the Aegean Sea, where a very large and severe quake will build up over a long period of time, bringing much fear, misery, terror, and destruction, and costing many lives, as I explained to you earlier. Increasingly, many human lives will be lost in Iraq in the coming time, also the bomb attacks, because these will become more frequent and more brutal from now on. These are predictions that will come true by the 20th of April, after which I will be able to tell you more when I visit you again, although I cannot determine the time for that now. Now I would like to tell you that it is again necessary for you to write a letter regarding the fact that all the evils of the world are based solely on the existing and constantly increasing overpopulation, and can only be contained and remedied if a worldwide birth control reduces the earthly humanity to a reasonable level. You should then, as you have done before in such actions, send the letter to the governments and other responsible ones on the earth, as well as to authoritative media.
I will do that and present the letter for your reading the next time you visit. But now I would like to ask a question about your handling of weapons in connection with the population. It is a question that has interested me and others for a long time, although I have never asked about it. But what I want to do now is this. Firstly, are all your weapons designed as working tools, whereby I only mean the ones you carry with you, or which are simply considered to be handguns, like handguns in our country?
All weapons in this regard, as well as all other small and large weapons, are also designed as working tools of various kinds. The type of use as a tool is, for example, the lifting and transportation of heavy weights or of objects and goods, in that anti-gravity is generated by the weapons or by the working device, which facilitates the lifting, moving, and transportation of loads. The devices are also used to generate heat, cold or fire, etc., if required, as well as to dig up earth, to fuse metals. Glass, synthetic materials, and many other materials with each other, also in such the wise that, for example, metal can be fused with glass, with stone, synthetic materials, and other materials. There are many possibilities in this respect, as well as in the use of our weapons as working tools. Of course, we also possess exclusive working devices, working robots and working apparatus of every possible kind, but which would appear futuristic to the Earth humans if I were to describe them as such and in their function.
I am aware of that, but I have no idea of the full extent of their possible uses. Of course, I'm aware that your weapons can be used as such, with various forms of weapon energy, and that they can shoot tiny energy projectiles of great penetrating and explosive power. As I know from Manara, Simyahse, Asket, and Quetzal, although I myself was once allowed to do shooting exercises with such an old weapon, you only have energy-based weapons that only shoot energies and energy projectiles, but no more material projectiles. We call them ray guns.
That is true. The energies are of various kinds, as are the energy projectiles, which are much more effective than all the material projectiles of earthly weapons of any kind known to you.
Heat rays, cold rays, rays with an anesthetic or lethal effect, then also electromagnetical swinging waves and energy projectiles, etc. The weapons and the associated working tools are not operated mechanically and not manually, but only by thought-swinging waves, as I know.
This also corresponds to the facts. Every weapon and all the possibilities of using it for work purposes, etc., can only be used through thought-swinging waves that are tuned to the thought patterns of the person to whom the weapon belongs. Second and third persons can therefore, under no circumstances, use a weapon once it has been adjusted to the thought-swinging waves of a particular person, not even as a working tool.
You once explained to me that in your country weapons are also used for sporting purposes, such as marksmanship or simply for personal enjoyment. What about the possession and carrying of weapons, which are without exception designed as energy weapons? In our country, this is regulated by strict laws, whereby not everyone is allowed to buy, own, or carry a weapon, which is probably a good thing, considering the amount of harm weapons do to the earthly population by humans who should not actually be given a weapon in their hands. Murder out of jealousy or greed for profit, out of hatred, bullying, as well as out of sheer lust for murder, out of anger, alcohol, or drug addiction, etc., are as much a part of the agenda of the Earth humans as murder and manslaughter by religious and political fanaticism, as well as by terror and war. Nevertheless, many Earth humans have weapons with which they wreak havoc. Some have them legally, but many also have them illegally. I believe that weapons should only be in the hands of humans who can be absolutely certain that they will never cause harm. This would, however, require thorough psychological tests to ensure that the person to whom a weapon is entrusted never misuses it. This would have to be done not only in the civilian, but also in the military sphere, and this would have to continue until the human being of the Earth in general has reached the point where he or she lives his or her life according to the creational natural laws and recommendations, as is the case with you.
Our ancestors already had your idea, who acted within the framework you mentioned, until one day our folks were ready to cultivate their world of thoughts and feelings as well as their whys of acting according to the laws of creation, from which the state of our present lifestyle has resulted in a comprehensively responsible form. These absurdities are completely impossible for us, because our evolution of consciousness has already reached a level several thousand years ago that is far above these inhuman primitivities. Thus, weapons are not intended to kill, but only in an extreme emergency when there is no other possibility of self-defense. Possible conflicts, which, however, have not occurred among our races for thousands of years, which may arise among foreign races and in which we may become involved, we settle by force of arms only when circumstances require it. But only with stunning effects because we consider killing to be contrary to creation in relation to the teachings of the Spirit, aka creation energy teaching. Only in the very first emergency of self-defense against a human being would the use of a deadly weapon be considered for us. This order also applies with regard to the killing of animals, so that we do not know any hunting as it is practiced by terrestrial human beings. Only in extreme emergencies would we kill low animals for self-preservation in order to obtain food. However, our animal world is left to itself. Therefore, it regulates itself. The fact that we let the fauna, as well as the flora, lead their natural life can only be achieved by regulation, because we keep our planetary population within the limits of the natural and therefore do not allow overpopulation to occur. We cover our meat requirements by cloning or replicating living cells of animals and all kinds of creatures, which have been bred by replication for about 4,000 years, which also applies to many animals and creatures and all kinds of plant products, in addition to the fact that we also do horticulture and field cultivation for vegetables and fruits, as well as herbs and spices, etc., We also produce many kinds of materials by replication or multiplication, as you once called this process. But as far as the possession of weapons is concerned, it has to be said that every human being on our planet, as well as on various other worlds of our Federation, is free to possess a weapon without any permission for whatever purpose. Many possess weapons which are used as pure working tools, but also for the pleasure of leisure time activities regarding shooting in competition, for which only electronic targets are used. And indeed, many people of our worlds possess any kind of weapons, but no mischief is done with them, just as they are not used for murder, etc. Ausartungen, to get very badly out of control of the good human nature, as murder and manslaughter, jealousy, hatred, vengeance and revenge, war, terror and fanaticism of any kind have not been seen in our world for several millennia, as also no crimes, no felonies, and also not uprisings, etc. in any form, because all humans of our worlds live according to the spiritual teaching, and thus in full awareness of the fulfillment of the creational laws and recommendations. In this form, our efforts are also directed towards pacifying other peoples of other planets with whom we can contact and instruct according to our directives.
It would be nice if the Earth were the same as yours. However, it will still take a long time before this happens. Because despite their advanced technology and all the other many great and valuable achievements of all kinds, the Earthlings still live in a barbarism that must be described as quite primitive. Unfortunately, it is still the case that neither the individual human being, with few exceptions, nor the governments and authorities do anything against this barbarism and against the inhibition and suppression of the progress of consciousness, whereby the evolution of the consciousness progresses only extremely slowly. On the contrary, everything is promoted that serves to dull consciousness, because through it the human can be exploited, subjugated, and controlled in every respect, right down to the most intimate private life. Only very few humans recognize this fact and resist it, while the great masses behave stupidly and care little about what is going on around them. Only when they are troubled by any events or machinations of governments and authorities, etc., do they get upset and try to do something about it. But it is usually too late for that. The humans in the great masses are indifferent and care little about the fact that their stupid, disinterested, and irresponsible behavior leads to the fact that the individual becomes more and more under the control of the governments, authorities as well as the police, the secret services and the religions and sects, and is thereby more and more restricted and enslaved in social as well as private freedom. The few, however, who recognize this, know it, and speak out against it, are misunderstood by the masses who believe in religion and the authorities, and are insulted and slandered as do-gooders or troublemakers. The creational laws and recommendations are deliberately forgotten or deliberately disregarded because they demand order, progress, and a comprehensive evolution of consciousness, which is contrary to the great masses, because they believe themselves to be disadvantaged and bound by the laws and recommendations of the creation, and they can no longer live out their forms. This is also seen in relation to the constant further advancement of overpopulation, through which the Earth human slowly but surely destroys the planet and digs his or her own grave. In addition, however, there are also the criminal machinations of certain powerful statesmen, such as Bush, Putin, Olmert, and many others, who have people killed on a massive scale by secret actions of their secret services or by open wars and revolts. Just as this is also peculiar to religious sectarian and ideological fanatics and terrorists. But now something else. With regard to the clothing of the Plejaren, you said the following on the 8th of March.
We Plejaren are always so fully clothed in public that no parts of the body are freely visible, which could be sexually provocative to the opposite sex. When swimming in public, of course, a sparser swimming suit is worn, but in relation to the nakedness of the body, it remains within chaste and ethical or moral limits. Therefore, it is neither customary nor permissible to wear lewd clothing in everyday life or when swimming in public waters or in facilities intended for that purpose, nor to go half naked or completely naked. Half or full nudity is only given in an intimate wise in life communities or special friendships, but never in public. In the case of special friendships, it should be noted that half or full nudity is only justified if the friendship of both sexes is in a purely platonic form without any sexual intent. Morality has a very high value for us Plejaren, which is why the ethical forms are strictly maintained and cultivated in every respect, which of course means that prostitution of any form is frowned upon and forbidden by law.
I was asked what is meant by sexually suggestive in terms of the wearing of clothing. From my understanding, I explained that this meant the wearing of clothing which sexually displays provocatively sexual characteristics, or which provocatively expresses the sexual organs. In the case of women, I think this also applies to the bosom. Because I have only ever seen the female sex in your country chastely cover the bosom up to the base, unless clothing is worn that reaches completely to the base of the neck. Am I going with my explanation correctly?
Your explanation corresponds to what is given.
Okay, thanks. But now it is time for me to go over there, because I still have a lot to do before it is 13:30 hours, and we have to turn to the joint correction work.
Then go, my friend, and I will report for correction work at the agreed time. After that, I will have to go because my duty calls me soon again. Besides, I will be absent for a longer period of time, as will Florina and Injana, whose substitutes will be personnel unknown to you.